Here is, to all of us, a reminder that we are essentially living in a plutocracy. This is the new mega project of billionaire Kevin O'Leary. It's called Project Stratos. It's $100 billion data center construction project in Norton, Utah, who essentially, without any permission from the local residents, purchased a 40,000 acre piece of land in Norton, Utah, to construct what is probably the largest data center known to man, to probably perform some of the most evil operations known to man. Now, as much as this image kind of makes it look like it is the middle of the desert, that is not entirely true. The area that was bought, or I think that is still in the process of being bought, is called Bear River. Bear River, or like the area, but it is not just a desert area, it's an area that actually holds wildlife and a place that is necessary for the preservation of many wild animals. You've probably seen him around. He was, I think, a host of Shark Tank, which was kind of like this celebrity reality TV show where they tried to pitch ideas to billionaire investors, and then they would like take it or not. Shark Tank. It was a very famous show. Simon Cowell, but for finance bros. He's a supporter of Trump, I believe. Yeah, he's on Fox Business. He's a fucking demon. This guy, for a long time, has been a supporter, right? He's a multi-billion-dollar investor, but now he's invested in essentially the Death Star of AI data centers. Now, why are data centers so bad, right? I mean, yeah, we have the natural aspect where this guy is building the data centers on essentially naturally preserved land. That's the one aspect. The other aspect is the contamination that AI data centers are creating. Now, in just the last 5 years, the value of data center construction in place by the private sector in the United States has gone from $9.23 billion, which is already a pretty significant number, to $41 billion just in the last 5 years, right? 5-6 years. 300% increase. A medium-sized data center can consume up to 110 million gallons of water per year, which is equivalent to the annual water usage of approximately 1,000 households. The electricity generation for global data centers could have produced approximately 182 million tons of CO2 emissions. As much as electricity people think that is entirely stored in batteries and it can be renewed, yes, electricity is technically a renewable energy. However, the increased demand for AI has needed to build the capital necessary for it, which is the data centers. And the electricity necessary for it, the demand for it has also increased to extreme numbers. And as a result, a lot of data companies or AI data companies, Google, Meta, OpenAI, they are essentially walking back their climate promises that they did a couple years ago, back then when they were liberal and stuff, and are using not renewable energy to fuel up their data centers, which means fossil fuels, of course, and coal, right? More specifically, we are going back to the Industrial Revolution and using coal now. AI already on its own is very contaminates a lot. Not only in general the biosphere and even more accelerating climate change, which Jesus fucking Christ I'm feeling right now, but more specifically it fucks over, and I mean fucks over, the local populations. Just in this area, right, just in the Bear River or Box Elder County, which is the location of this mega project, right, that we have just looked at, just in this specific area, the construction is expected to raise daytime temperatures in Box Elder County by as much as 5 degrees Fahrenheit and 28 degrees during nighttime. That is significant. And that is just temperatures. Apart from temperatures, data centers consume water, a fuck ton of water. And the construction of this mega project they have already put into motion diverting mass amounts of water, which would be in public use, or it would be just in the county, accessible to everyone, and have diverted it, or are already making plans to divert it specifically and exclusively to this data center. Which means that that's going to create, because water is a finite resource after all, it's going to create scarcity in the area, raising water prices up. This is not a one-time phenomenon. This is something that we see all the time, all across the United States. And we also see it in other parts of the world, more specifically Mexico, where we are already seeing like indigenous communities or local communities suffering mass like droughts as a result of data center construction. Analysis finds Box Elder data, which is the data center we're talking about, center could release as much heat as 23 atomic bombs per day. The energy released from these data centers are equivalent to 23 Nagasaki atomic bombs every single day. We're not talking about radiation, right? We're talking about purely energy. But that's why it's raising daytime temperatures by 5 degrees Fahrenheit and during the day and 28 degrees during the night. Because these things are hot and they're releasing it. Because data centers are fucking powerful, get really hot, and that's why you need these mass amounts of water, because you need to cool them down. It's expected to rely on massive dry cooling infrastructure using hundreds of acres of industrial scale fans to continuously cool down hot radiator pipes. Okay, I did not know this. I thought it was going to be water cooled, just like the majority of data centers, but they're using a dry cooling technique, which means that they're not cooling it with water. Instead of using water, they're just using a fuck ton of fans to cool these data centers down. Data centers get fucking hot, and when they get hot, they need to get cooled down, because if not, they're just going to overheat and explode essentially.
Rights application has been submitted to divert water to use for generating power.
Oh, okay. That's why I thought that the water is being used for cooling, is actually being used as water generation. So this is Kevin O'Leary. He is the billionaire investor that's heading this project right now. He's a fucking demon. The project is not just a regular data center, right? I said that it's 40,000 acres, which is around, I did the conversion because I'm not American. It's about 161 squared kilometers. It's a gigantic data center, right? I mean, there is a bit of an outline right here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the way. Here you have it. That's how big it is, but you can't really imagine it. So I put it in American terms. It's 3 times the size of Manhattan. 3 times the size of the entire island is gonna be the size of this single data center monstrosity. Now you might be thinking a little bit now, or realizing why this is such a big deal. The reason why this is such a big deal is because it went through essentially no consent from the local population. This is not a new thing. Data centers, whenever they get built, some multi-billion-dollar company, they get the licenses from the state, because local governments essentially just enable capital to do whatever they want as long as they have the money. So they purchase the license from the state to build essentially whatever they want. And it goes through no public debate. There is no referendum. There is no debate about whether this should be built, could be built. What are the logistics? What is the environmental impact? The public has no saying on whether this gets built or it doesn't get built, right? This one, as I previously mentioned, is even more destructive than could be imagined. I mean, it is built on essentially a natural park, right? Or a natural reserve for animals. It's gonna be completely destroyed, and the environmental impact for the local population is beyond comprehension. The thing is that a lot of the data, or a lot of the research on environmental impact, is not existent yet, right? This is such a new phenomenon that we don't even know the long-term effects of these data centers. We just know that it raises CO2 emissions. We know that it consumes a fuck ton of electricity. We know that it pollutes. It pollutes energy. It pollutes also noise. But there is not a lot of like long-term effect research done about these data centers. Now, understandably, the local population is angry about this, because there is no process of debate with them. Here we have a video about essentially I think it's the local council being booed by protesters. So you can see there's a lot of people there, a lot of people with signs. Might give you an idea about the popularity of this construction project. So as we can see, this project has garnered a lot of attention just because of how unpopular it is. This is very close to me because I know just how devastating these projects are, and because of the lenient market regulations on capital in the United States and in many parts of the world, just through decades of austerity politics and neoliberal market reforms, these things just happen because there is no government to stop it. The government that is supposed to be in place to stop the government that is meant to be in place to stop projects that contaminate the environment, that kill people long term, give people cancer, or any kind of impact that fucks over workers or fucks over the environment or animal life, anything, is gone because neoliberal politics have convinced us that all of that is communist socialist bullshit, and that by limiting government we are going to create the most efficient and equal society, which is, of course, like, if you even think about it for 5 seconds, you know it's bullshit. But there is an entire political culture now built on the ideas that if we give the market more power, then everything's gonna be solved. And as we can see, it gets us to a place where we have 1,000 mega data center projects every week that do not go through any kind of public debate, fuck over the population, and kill the environment and kill us slowly. Now, apart from that, we have this video. I don't know if you know Tucker Carlson. I remember back then when he was a Fox News host. Now, you probably know Fox News. Why is that? Because they have been probably the vanguard of the American far right, the strongest vanguard of the American far right, just because of their power of getting Donald Trump into power originally in 2016 and maintaining their support for blatantly American fascism. Unfortunately, and I say this with great sadness, Tucker Carlson sometimes has decent takes, and it's not because he's a good person. He is a horrible person. He's a person that has not only said a bunch of hateful, misogynistic, racist, Islamophobic, transphobic things in his past, directly allowing far right that is now established and institutionalized in American politics helped him get into power. But also, like, when you look at his politics, it is just blatant white nationalism, right? Or white supremacy nationalism. The thing is that sometimes he has decent takes on things like Israel and on things that fuck over the American working class. It's only that his idea of the American working class are white people, right? So whenever you see him having a good take against someone like Kevin O'Leary here, or sometimes he has decent takes on Israel and Palestine, just because he's a big America first guy, so he doesn't understand why the United States is giving Israel like $30 billion annually. He is doing this, as they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. And that's exactly Tucker Carlson. Let's look at this clip of him actually pushing back on Kevin O'Leary and his plan.
Let me ask, though, about why taxpayers should have to pay for this. If it's a private business and your tenants are some of the richest companies in the world, why would taxpayers be required, as they now are, to subsidize this?
They don't necessarily have to do that. They just won't win any contracts. It's a competition.
But why are you getting tax breaks is my question.
Yeah, everybody, you go back and you say, what incentives can you give us to invest $15 billion in the first 1.5 gigs? That's what it takes. I have to go raise 50.
Well,
that's just
okay,
the
but anyone who
first
starts a business, why should taxpayers have to pony up for that?
They don't. But
well, of course they do.
others-
If you're getting a tax break and they're not, they're making up the difference. There's a state budget.
Okay, that's no problem. That's
Yeah.
no problem. I can build it in Texas. I can build it in Jacksonville, Mississippi.
But why, if it's such a good business, would you be asking taxpayers to help pay for it without giving them equity in the company? Are you giving taxpayers shares?
No, the investors get the shares. But here's why they would do it.
Why would the taxpayers have to?
Well,
I mean, in other words, if you want to start a business, but why am I, as a taxpayer, forced to pay for it? Your business. I don't get it.
And that gets us to another point that I forgot to mention, is that this thing is not built by the billionaire, right? Or it's not paid by it. As much as this guy is a very, very rich individual, I forgot to Google his net worth, but he's famous for being a multi-billion dollar investor. he is not really the one paying for this. Who is it paying for? Well, Tucker already kind of mentioned this, and that is because the state, right? They didn't just allow him to give him the license. The Utah state gave Kevin O'Leary here a 92% energy tax cut and an 80% property tax cut to build this data center. Essentially, this thing is being completely financed, or by vast majority financed by taxes, by the state that is exempting this project from paying taxes, right? A lot of the energy, the money that's going to be put towards this is going to either, he's not going to have to pay, or it's going to be directly paid by taxpayers, right? That's why Tucker is pushing on him a little bit here, because it's like, free market, why aren't you paying for this, right? If you want it so much, why aren't you putting how expensive? $100 billion towards it. That is because capitalism, at the end of the day, will find any way imaginable to cut down on costs and to make as much profit as possible. And is going to even use the state to facilitate the construction or facilitation of capital if it means that it's going to be cheaper. That's how it works. The data center is expected to create 1,000 permanent jobs, right? The construction is one thing, but apart from the construction, once it's done, data centers don't really require that much maintenance. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of computers that you just need to kind of maintain, but the jobs in the area are going to be very little. And even apart from that, you have to ask yourself, are the costs equivalent to the destructive impact that this project is creating? I would say that no project that is harming the environment, killing wildlife, and essentially fucking over the local population, because they're going to have to pay essentially the difference, the taxes and energy, because it's going to raise energy in the area, maybe in the entire state, as a result of this project. It's going to be paid by the local population. It's just inflation, right? I don't think that that's worth it. Arguing that jobs are just like saving all of this, I don't think makes a lot of sense, right? Like you can say that this creates jobs. Capitalism does not necessarily want to create jobs, it wants to cut down on jobs. A lot of the jobs that's why, there's the saying that AI is going to take away our jobs, and that is because it's much easier to automate a lot of jobs rather than giving them to individuals. They don't necessarily want to create jobs. And even if it created a lot of jobs, I don't think that this makes a lot of sense to build anyway. Economic growth, I mean, this is not really producing anything, right? All of the economic growth is speculative because of the AI bubble, right? Financial capital. Maybe it's going to raise the speculative bubble of AI, that is for sure, but is it actual economic growth if it's not manifested in anything material for the population? At the end of the day, GDP does not tell you a whole lot about how the population is living. If people cannot afford their groceries, cannot afford the house, cannot afford to even drive a car because now there's a war in Iran, that is not good living standards, right? Economic growth is only as good as it's translated into what it gives to the population. The United States has the largest GDP in the entire world. But the living standards in the United States, universally for the vast majority of the population, have been horrible, have been terrible. If you look at any metric, from the cost of living to homelessness, from groceries to mortgage rates and everything, it's been since the 1980s, but for the last 10, 20 years, have just been decreasing. The minimum wage is stagnant while productivity is going up and up, and profits for corporations are going up and up, but it's not reflected in wages for the workers. It's not reflected in better living conditions for the vast majority. I don't think that an imaginary line going up, I don't think that an imaginary line of economic speculation going up and up and up is a good metric of how a population is living. I think better metrics are just living, not only looking at inequality, but access to basic needs. Housing, energy, food, right? Transportation, all of that. That's why here in Europe we pride ourselves so much on being better off than the Americans, even though that is also largely a lie, because we also implement essentially neoliberal austerity politics, which are getting us closer to living in what the United States is living right now. But we look at having better quality food. Having in some European countries, we have public housing, right? We have universal healthcare. We have public transportation. Those are all results of public ownership of some basic human rights or resources. But it also, we see that like decent living is reflected in services that are provided for us, not just a line of economic growth. I don't think that a GDP is a good estimate of how good or not a population is doing. But, economic growth, we've been going through economic growth. And is it being reflected in our everyday lives? Because unless you have a way to direct that economic growth towards redistribution of the wealth, center-right, right-wing, and far-right parties, like from neoliberals, sometimes even social democrats, but mainly neoliberals, to the entire right wing, that for the last 30, 40 years have been implementing austerity politics and market reforms that gave more power to the private sector, which essentially just means there is no redistribution. It gives more power to capital to expand. It completely destroys unions. It destroys any kind of public programs because that is not necessary, and it's too much of it creates a deficit. But then you cut taxes on capital. You cut any form of redistributive politics that could take this hypothetical wealth that is being created, still in an exploitative manner, of course, but is being created, and you don't give it to the population. You keep it for private capital. You keep it for the 1%, and that's why you get where we are now, where I think the metric is that the top 1% now owns more than 95% of the wealth of the entire humanity. Yeah, the world's biggest 50 corporations are worth $13 trillion. We know that the United States is extremely lenient when it comes to capital, private property, right? To a point where it's just ridiculed. They essentially used this obscure state agency known as Military Installation Development Authority, and also like private meetings with the Bucks Elder County Commission with no public comment or no public supervision or anything, right? The guy, Kevin O'Leary, promises to use the data center to help national security. This is very funny what it just showed because it's a bunch of fucking military tanks, but the guy essentially is gonna use the data center to power up AI technology that is gonna be used by the US military and by the US government for national security. Now, if you're not a toddler, you know that national security is a very nice, I guess, dog whistle to mean we're gonna use it for the military, and that military is gonna be used to destabilize and overthrow any kind of country that we don't fuck with. In the most recent example, that is Iran, the war in Iran. But in previous examples, it's been Gaza, right? Israel is directly funded by the United States and helped, not just economically, but also sending them weapons. Palantir is an AI company that creates AI specifically used for military objectives. Palantir cooperates with the US military, but it also has ties with Israel and creates AI technology that analyze human behavior, can determine if a person is a threat or not. They scan millions of data to determine like next steps for military. Kevin O'Leary has deep ties with the American right wing, which also has ties with Palantir, right? Peter Thiel is the CEO of Palantir, and he's a Trump supporter. And he's like a weird techno-fascist, where he believes that the world should be run by billionaires and the working class should be completely enslaved by billionaires running on AI. It's a fuckfest. It's insane. But it's not relevant in this case. The only relevant part is that Kevin O'Leary wants to cooperate with the US State Department to create AI for the US military. Like, it's created mass protests, and right now the county is getting signatures to call for a referendum, right? They need 5,000 signatures to get a referendum going to determine, like, put it essentially into the public decision on whether this should be built or not. What happened, well, once like public protest happened, right? We had this video of people booing the guy, right? Like it created a lot of discourse. What the state commission did was they threw out all the complaints that were written about this data center being built and have declared that any new complaints have to be paid for, right? There is essentially a pay to complain card where you have to pay $15 to submit a new complaint to the state, which is just like so on its face plutocracy as it can be. You have to pay to complain to the state. And even when you complained, as we can see, the state just does not give it into consideration. There is no democratic process. None. Absolutely none. The Industrial Revolution. Is it like, you know, we look at the Industrial Revolutions. The first one was, I think it was the steam engine, right? We had the second one built around like automation, Fordist style, manufacturing, car production, right? Transatlantic development. We also had the third industrial revolution was I think it was the robotics, right? The robotics was the third one, and the fourth one was the internet. Now, the Industrial Revolution should not on its face immediately be considered a good thing, I think. Like, I am not going to be that we should go back before the Industrial Revolutions and like abolish all machinery and technology, no. But I also recognize the destructiveness that a lot of these technologies brought onto the world. The problem not necessarily is the technology itself, is who gets to make the decisions around the technology. AI is not in the hands of the public. It is a technology that is entirely in the hands of a few corporations, right? And they get to decide what to do with it. Just because it's different does not necessarily mean that it's progress, in my opinion. I don't think that you can create a thing, say it's good because it's different than what we had before. AI could be a good thing, but who does it serve right now? It's not in the public hands. You have to pay for it, right? Right now, of course, I know ChatGPT, Cloud, Grok, they are like, there's free versions for them, but at the end of the day, they are not it's not in the public realm. So that means that it's not decided upon by us. And it never has. These technologies have always been in the hands of capital or governments. But at least before, they, on the one hand, did not have such a environmental impact. And when they did, we did something about it, right? The Industrial Revolution was extremely destructive, both on the environment and on human labor. But what we did is that we unionized, we created regulations around these technologies and this capital that made it so a lot of the negative impacts of industrialization were minimized. It was always about control. But at least back then, when you create a steam engine, you created trains. Now, trains and ships were, of course, created to transport large amounts of capital, of resources, rather to build new capital or to transport already existing products, right? Just the flow of capital, that's normal. But trains can also be used to transport humans. The same thing happened with essentially every new technology under the Industrial Revolution. You have a technology that can be used both for the expansion of capital, it can be used for wars, right, for destruction, but it can also be used by the people. I mean, come on, like planes, tanks, they can be used for transport, but they can also be used during a war. Right now, AI is overwhelmingly has a negative impact. It has a negative impact on the environment, it has a negative impact on the working class, and it has a negative impact on just our fucking brains, because we have become reliant on this agent that tells us everything we want to hear, never questions us, never debates us, and gives us sometimes false information, or it gives us information that is screwed towards whatever the ideological line of the company that owns the AI is. AI does not have a positive impact. Now, I'm not saying that it cannot have a positive impact, but you gotta ask yourself who controls this technology, because it's just in the hands of corporations. The governments are not doing anything, and the corporations are actively using this technology to, as I said, replace us, right? Replace the working class, automate us. they use it for wars, right? Like Palantir and many other like security companies, which are using them to like apply AI to either surveil us or to kill us, right? Rather, it's people in Palestine, or if it's people in Iran, or if it's gonna be people in Latin America. And the only like public domain AI that exists is shitty AI videos, which are destroying our brain, and ChatGPT, which people use overwhelmingly to plagiarize or to get very easy answers on exams. I know way too many people that use it as Google. You can just Google it, but no, you use ChatGPT because you think that it's better. Right now, AI does not have a positive impact. And just because it's a new thing, it's a new industrial revolution, does not necessarily mean that it's good. It could be good in a future society where this thing is in the public domain. AI could be used by the public sector to automate jobs that are not that people don't want to do. It's not democratically decided because we live in a society where everything but the means of production, from our workplace to the streets that we walk on to the houses that we live in, everything is in the hands of capital, in the hands of capitalists, of the people that own capital. It's not in our hands. It's not democratically decided upon. Our workplace is not run by us. It is run by one or two or 5 or 10 people who decide how to make as much profit as possible. And if that means automating the entire workplace, they're gonna do it.